Being an engineer and being good with words is hard. Building a product means making tough decisions to grow the product. And DevRel is the same. You need to figure out how to efficiently grow the product and make people efficient using your product. Do you think DevOps people want to read a book about dev? No, they want a quick start. They want to know specifically how to do X with freaking whatever, right? They don't care about the book. They care about how to solve a problem. I'm such an amazing engineer that all of my live demos work. I'm joking. No.
Hello everyone, welcome to the another episode of TACOS, where we're going to talk about community and open source, one of the smartest mind in the open source ecosystem, where some of the contribution that may inspire the people around the system. So a very welcome to the Adnan Rahić, who is a senior developer advocate at TracetestL and CubeShop. He's a passionate advocate for developers and a driving force in the tech industry. With the expertise in the open source monitoring tools and a track record impactful conference talk which has delivered all around the globe, he is a prominent figure in the developer community. So let's dive right into the conversation with awesome Adnan, and welcome Adnan again to TACOS.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that this is the best intro I've had in my life. I haven't. I'm not that cool. I have to get that out from the get-go. You made me sound way cooler than I actually am. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, really thrilled to be here. Really happy. Yeah, I think it's an awesome opportunity. It's a great podcast you're doing, and I think we definitely need something like this to discuss community and developer relations. And I mean, people don't really know what it is. Let's delve into that.
Exactly, because developer relation or developer advocacy, these are the terms where people generally don't even realize, because they only think about developer advocacy or developer. It means people who are very active on social media, people who are in a public figure, or very active on YouTube or Instagram. Those are the people who are a developer advocate, who have a knowledge of technical expertise, or that kind of background that they have. But that is not the case. The people who are able to represent it, they are the advocate about the product or service they are pitching. I would like to know how's your experience turned into the developer advocacy roles, and how you being landed to this role.
It's an interesting story, actually. As pretty much everybody in the space, I started out as a programmer or as a web developer, or whatever you want to call it, engineer, and I did that for a few years. We even, a few of my friends and we started a startup as well. So you could say that I was an entrepreneur. I mean, it wasn't really a big venture, so to say. It was a small investment that we got from an investment fund, and then we tried building an online learning platform. So the point of it was that we tried to, because I'm from Bosnia and Herzegovina in the Balkans, which is a very small region of the world where probably maybe 15 to 20 million people speak the same language. So across all of the ex-Yugoslavian countries, we speak a very familiar language. So the language is very, very close to one another. So we're focusing on, Udemy is a pretty massive site and a pretty massive market, but not everybody knows English. So we were thinking, let's make something for the local 20 million or so people community, and make something where we can educate people to learn foreign languages, to learn programming, basically all of the skills that make money, so to say. So we're trying to basically give back to the community, to our general community in the region. And it went pretty well for a few years, but sadly enough, it didn't take off, which is 9 out of 10 startups fail. So that's perfectly normal that it doesn't become super successful. And that was basically the reasoning how I went into doing developer relations. Back then it was called technology evangelism, and then it was called developer advocacy, and then it's a bunch of different, especially the evangelist term I never really understood, because nobody really understood, because people would ask me if I do religion or what. I was like, that's not really how any of this works. And it was a natural transition for me, because I was building a platform for education and developer relations is to a big extent, it is actually based in educating and helping engineers be successful. That's the simplest way of saying it. You said at the beginning, developer advocates are considered popular people on social media. It is, I mean, it's not really that. It kind of is, but it's not really that. It's often considered a popularity contest, but the popularity contest is just for the socials. The actual grunt work of developer relations is not really a popularity contest. It's a lot of it is education and relationships that you create with your community and that you create with people that want to use the product you're creating. So yeah, that's a rough rundown of how I transitioned into being a developer advocate from being an engineer. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go back. I would say, being an engineer and being good with words is hard. Being, a developer advocate and explaining things to engineers is also very hard. So, I considered I could either be a very mediocre engineer or I could be probably a bit better in doing developer relations. So I said, what the hell, let's do developer relations instead. So.
To be very honest, yeah, you're absolutely right. But what I feel, being specifically into advocacy, people tend to think a lot, people having a crazy, social media reach. As you rightly said, it's not the case. But the first thing they're looking for that, okay, I don't have that much following on the social media. I don't have that much following on LinkedIn, Instagram, or a Twitter, right? So that how can I be fit into this role? What I really feel is that as you transform from being an entrepreneur to this role, right? It's all about how you convey your story and what are the product and service you are advocating for. Ultimately, you are explaining to the people, right, that why you should use your product. What are the benefit of using it? What kind of a change that will come if you're using that product or service, right? So that is the kind of a thing. And even I was myself also not been aware of this kind of evangelism or advocate or advocacy or a platform advocate. And there are a lot of fancy terms which is there right now. But got to know that these are the things that are already doing it by part of a community and the community of some of the community or the open source project which are already contributing. Those actually experience helped me a lot to land up over here, right? But I didn't knew what was I was doing in the community. That was actually advocacy or the evangelism kind of thing that I was doing. But experience always help a lot when you transform and when you shift your career into something. I would like to know when you transfer your entrepreneurship to this one, right? Because you have a strong background, and even I started my startup 2 years back, and I dropped 3 months back only, and now full time I'm doing consulting and purely active on this social media and trying to create more content about the specifically in the cloud because that's my domain. So, how your entrepreneurship experience helped in this role where you are already building a couple of good projects, which we are going to talk about for sure in a couple of minutes. So how that experience helped over here?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think the main thing is that you get insight into what the product needs to succeed. It's very straightforward. It doesn't make sense to do things that aren't going to grow the product. And developer relations in itself is to a very big extent, maybe even the biggest extent, marketing, growth. It's a way of growing the product, that's what I learned from building a product was that, well, we need to do things. It doesn't really matter what you do. What matters is that you pick to do the things that's going to grow the product, and that's what DevRel is much of it is about as well. You're growing the product if you're teaching engineers how to use your product properly or using best practices, etc. You're growing the product if you're writing a blog post that has a massive traffic or massive reach because people want to know about a certain topic. All of those things boil down to growth and basically marketing, based on what your company or your whatever structure is. DevRel often is considered as a subset of marketing, which is, it's perfectly normal, perfectly natural. Somewhere else, it's probably looked as a totally separate branch where it's not part of marketing and it's not part of engineering. Instead, it's in between, which is also, that's perfectly fine, but it will more often make more sense to be part of a marketing or a PR type of thing, which is something that I like saying, is that, I mean, developer relations is basically, we're doing PR, we're doing public relations, but for developers. So we're basically, it's the same thing, right? So in that sense, it's all marketing, you know, it's all, and that's kind of looping back into the popularity contest. That's also growth, you know, if you're popular, quote unquote popular, people will see it, and that's reach, that's traffic. So that's also part of it, you know. It's all, it all boils down to building a product means making tough decisions to grow the product. And DevRel is the same. You need to figure out how to efficiently grow the product and make people efficient using your product. I hope that kind of puts
of course.
something into
Because I think developer advocacy is not just part of the developer ecosystem, but it's a part of not just marketing, sales, because they have to be peer to connect or communicate with each and every team members. Because when I landed up into this role, when I got an email, I got to know that I am actually part of the marketing team, not the actually a developer team or the infrastructure team. So I have to closely work with the marketing team to reach out to what are the ways we can engage the developers or the community. And every company has a different approach, right? What's your approach? Like how you engage your community or the developers who are using the product that you already building or the project that you're already working on? What is your approach?
The best approach that I've seen just on quality is content. It's always going to be content. And by content, I don't mean necessarily just, blog posts as a blog post, content, article, whatever. I mean content that is specific for what you want to accomplish. And that is all depending on the segmentation, your developer segmentation, basically what type of developer you want to attract. It's all dependent on the journey that a particular developer is at, et cetera, et cetera. It's all very nicely defined there's a book I really like called Developer Relations. It's basically called Developer Relations. And then it's like framework for developer relations. We can probably find the link for it and we can put it in the description later on. But in that book, yeah, they have a very nice explanation of that. It's all awareness, activation, engagement, retention. That's basically the loop of developer relations. And I think that's the root of the content, because I think when you generate a piece of, let's say, a tutorial for how to build XYZ with the product you're advocating, you're getting a lot of eyeballs and you're getting a lot of practical knowledge on how to use it. Right. Same goes if you create an example app in GitHub and you put that out there, let's say as part of the GitHub repo for your product. It's an amazing way of getting eyeballs and getting people to become successful really, really quickly. Same thing for a conference talk. I've had conference talks where people end up using our product. They just show up out of the woodwork. They just show up and say, "Oh yeah, I saw your talk at whatever conference, and I'm trying the product." And that's the conference was 6 months ago. So things like that work. But the difference between them is that which part of the developer journey is the person that wants to try your product. So for a content piece, let's say a blog post, they're probably at the beginning. For a conference talk, they're probably at the end. They already know what they want. They just kind of want that push to see what's happening. For let's say the sample application, that's probably somebody who he knows he wants it, but he doesn't really know how to get started. So that's that level of, I want to educate. And then you get the blog post, I want the awareness. And then you get the conference talk, so I want somebody to get engaged, right? I want the success aspect of it, right? So it's like a circle, but at the root of it, definitely, like, none of this works if you don't have an active community and if you're not working actively to engage the community and to actually nurture the community. I hope
Totally, of course. Because, inviting the people into the community or contributive project is kind of easy, but making them active or sustainable, right? Keep them over there. That's a difficult part. And that's where, content is the key. But how you deliver that, that's most important. But as you rightly said that way you gave a talk in the conference, after 6 months, people showed up. But I guess when you give a conference, you might store some of your material to refer them to use your product and let, hey, this is the tutorial, or this is the, slides are there, or these are the, couple of ways you can reach out to us to ask a question about it. Right? That's the, because the post feedback is very, very important, which I feel, people tend to forget that. And they are trying to go in the approach. For example, let's say Adnan, you are very active on, let's say, YouTube, or let's say you're writing a great blog post and you have very good reach, and you're trying, that's your approach to building a community or engage the developers, right? And I'm very fascinated about that. Now even I'm not very interested to write a blog post, because that's kind of a lazy, for me, I'm not able to do that. So I'm trying to follow that, because for me, that's the way people reading it. But that's just a one approach, right? So what do you think, right? What kind of, according to me, I think people should find out the way where they feel comfortable to engage and easy them to create the resources. It could be anything. It could be a Telegram group or a WhatsApp group or a blog post or a YouTube or any, just a meetup board or any kind of material, right? What do you think? What kind of people should generally follow that?
That's an interesting question. Regarding generally the video content, or like the generating video materials, I like the idea, and I've always liked the idea. It has never really worked for me. And I'm saying that from a person that I've created a video course, like what's it called? A video course, a 3-hour long video course. And it was meh. It was a great course. 7 people watched it. It was not a hit. Same thing with YouTube. Same thing with whatever type of videos I make on YouTube. They're probably not bad videos, but people don't really care that much, which is, I think, the reasoning behind that might very highly likely be because not enough people see them. Not enough people will get them pop up as suggestions or on Google or whatever, right? And it's very hard to do SEO for things like that. It's much easier to do SEO for content. Making a 1 minute, 2 minute video that's embedded as part of a blog post, wonderful. I think that's great. Doing workshops, like doing live stream workshops, freaking amazing. I've done workshops that are an hour and a half long, virtual webinar workshops with multiple times in the last 2 or so years. I've been doing them actively. They're phenomenal because they give on-demand best practice knowledge for people that want to know them, right? Videos, the 10-minute videos, dude, if I see a video in a documentation page, I'm gonna throw up. I swear to God, I do not like videos in documentation. Documentation is to get me working in 20 seconds, not like having to watch a 10-minute video. I don't want to watch a 10-minute video, right? I want to get like, I don't know, 1 page, this much text, and I want a sample. I want it to work, right? And that's probably not me, right? That's probably a lot of people. That's why my videos don't work, right? So I'm thinking that's my logic. I might be totally freaking wrong, but that's my experience so far. But yeah.
No, I totally agree. And the reason, why people are so much attracted to creating the video content is we think that it's kind of a fancy in the very term that that people can see that and they can be also, because right now people think that developer advocates as nothing but a content creators, right? Who create content or just publish that stuff. But creating this kind of material is it's very time consuming task as well. That's the reason people started that, but then able to continue that, and that maybe lose the interest or lack of motivation. A lot of other things are there. You asked me for that, from how long you're doing it, right? I told you like it's been 6 months and I'm not able to do that much episode because creating this kind of a thing it takes a lot of time. The only thing you can do if you really like that, if that is your way, if you like to write about it, you write it. If you just like to deliver, go and as you said, go live, do a live workshop so that you don't need to feel that way, right? You directly answer your questions, and that's the best way. And sometimes it happens to me a lot of times, like if I go everywhere and something is not working for me. Of course, it happens to us. There's so many technical difficulties might be come up there, right? So there will be so many difficulties or the problem that we face, right? Over the periods. Do you remember any kind of a challenges that you faced while I was building a community, or let's say you engaging, working on a couple of projects, and you get into this particular challenge or a problem, and then how you solve that. Because that's most important part, right? Knowing the problem is okay, but how you solve that problem, that's something I think help you learn a lot, right? Yes.
I mean that's what separates the boys from the men, right? Is that the saying? I don't know. I don't know sayings. It's not a question that's easy to answer, right? So I think the my reasoning behind it is that if you think of, let's say like this, you get an assignment to create a live stream webinar workshop that's 90 minutes long, and you're going to cover an entire topic with best practices, how to get started, yada yada, whatever, with the tool or product that you're working for, like the company you're working for. The hard part isn't the live stream. The hard part isn't the webinar or the talking or the whatever we're doing right now. The hard part is taking the time to prepare everything. You're saying you sometimes have a hard time to sit down and write a blog post. Dude, writing a blog post is freaking easy versus writing scripts for videos. You know how much scripting you have to write for 90 minutes of content? Dude, that's 1 month. That's 1 month of work for one person. If you're like literally doing, I mean, you can probably do, async, do a bunch of stuff in between, but that's because it's so freaking time consuming. It's hard. You have to write it multiple times. You have to set it up. You have to figure out what's important. You have to go over best practices. You have to go over how to install it, how to set it up. You have to go over what people want. You have to go over questions. It's not a straightforward process. And that's what I'm saying. It's not a question you really can answer. The hard part, it will vary for whoever is doing the workshop. But for me, in general, the setup is the hard part. I can do the video, like doing this as well, talking to you. It's no effort for me. I think this is fun. I love doing webinars. I think webinars are freaking fun. I do webinars, like community calls, engaging with the community at the job I'm doing right now at TracetestL. We do them every last Wednesday of the month. So once a month, we do webinars, and they're freaking awesome. I love doing them, right? Because I actually put in the work to prepare for them. So they're not, pardon my French, they're not a sack of shit. They're actually entertaining, and that's the thing. When you have the time and the effort, and you have you're basically ordered in a way where you know how to go about relaying the content and relaying the important information that you really want to say without taking up needless time. That's the hard part. If you get down to figuring out how to do that, I think you're going to be very successful in developer relations. So yeah, I think that answers the question of what is the hard part.
I think everyone has their own way of hard part, because I think everyone's way of working is very different. Yeah, your way of working is very different. My way of work might be different, right? So what makes you fit or makes you comfortable to complete that task? That is the most, I think people should be stick to that. What makes them comfortable? Because that them to manage their time, or they able to do a lot of other things as well, which eventually they were not able to do it, right? Because as you rightly said, writing, if you want to create a blog post, it's very easy. But if you for the same, writing a script is a very tedious task. Though now people are using so many AI tools to do so, but still it's a tedious task, right? Because you have to make a lot of changes into that, right? AI is not going to make your life more easy, right? But yeah, I just wanted to know what are the open source project that help you a lot, or couple of projects that you like to talk about that. According to me, because when I started working project, couple of projects which I picked up, I faced so many challenges, but the part is, when I faced any challenges, I try to connect with the people who are mentoring that particular projects, try to gain more inside information, like how it can help me. What I'm currently doing is going to add a value into what I'm currently doing. It is going to be usable for any of the project that I'm going to work in the future as well, or currently, which might be helping the organization, right? That might be project that might be helpful. So have you been to encountered in the beginning of any tools or the project that you worked for, or or think that, hey, there's something really excited, but I got stuck. But yeah, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to solve that or crack that anyhow.
So let me try answering that.
Yes.
I mean, pretty much the last 3 or 4 companies I've worked at, all of them have a strong focus on open source. Where the last 2, so this TracetestL I'm working at now, and the previous one called cube.dev. So that's like cube.dev. We'll put all the links below. It's also fully open source and committed to an open core business model. I would say these last 2, so the last 2 I mentioned, TracetestL and Cube, are by far the most amazing communities I've worked with. Primarily because the tool itself is open source, and anything you really want to get started with or get building, it's already there for you to learn. All of the content, all of the resources that you need, all of it is there, open on GitHub or in the documentation. So regarding that, I'm really happy to have had the opportunity to even work with that and contribute there. But I think most notably, what I really like talking about that I did in the past was probably 4 or so years ago. I worked at the company that does monitoring. The tool itself was obviously closed source, but the tooling around it, so basically the agents that were collecting metrics and logs and sending them to the tool itself, were all open source. And all of the tooling related to Node.js and JavaScript, they were all maintained by myself, right? Which is, it's open source, but it's kind of part of a company, right? So it was licensed as part, I don't even know, Apache, or I didn't really know. So it wasn't really MIT open source, and anybody could do whatever. It was still licensed to the vendor, but it was maintained by myself, and basically just by myself, because it was Node.js specific, and I was the only person that really knew Node.js. So it was like, yep, you got to do it. But it was still amazing fun, and I think that having that experience of working actively on a tool or a set of tools that customers are using, and you're getting one-on-one time with customers and hearing what they want, what they need, problems that they have, all of those things are really, really, really important if you want to do your job correctly or well. As I say, for developer relations, we need to understand what our engineers are facing regarding issues, and the best way of doing it is to actually get them to talk to you, which is not something engineers want to do, right? They don't want to talk to you. Like I mean, when's the last time I opened an issue on GitHub for some open source tool that I used? It's been a year, right? I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna search on GitHub, and if I don't find it, I'll try it myself, right? So engineers are generally like that, kind of introverted, kind of, I don't want to hassle anybody. And that's why I love people that don't give a shit and just like bother you. I love people that bother you because they tell you, oh, dude, this is terrible. And then I go like, it is actually terrible. And then I can go in and fix it, right? So I think that was the most notable thing for me, at least, was maintaining those tools and figuring out and having people running them in production, having them running in production Kubernetes clusters, tools that were collecting logs and forwarding and shipping logs were actually, that's one of the coolest things I've done. Probably won't do anything that cool ever again, but that's why I've focused on the popularity part and not on the engineering part that much,
Yeah. So even if you don't like to talk to like other engineers, you don't like to open an issue.
I don't know why, man. I just, I talk to people in Slack. If I have a problem and they have a Slack community or Discord or something, I go in there and, talk to them. But like issues and stuff like that, I haven't done that in ages, man. I don't know why. Maybe because I feel as if I'm, messing up their flow or something. If I just ask them in Slack and say like, hey, so I saw this, it's maybe less intrusive. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, because I've been to the couple of projects which run by the Mozilla Foundation where they used to trust the Firefox browser a lot, right? And same, the engineers generally don't even able to even use it. They're trying to solve that issue by themselves, or it's very internal. But when we face any issue, because that is something not the expected behavior for us, so we go to the GitHub issue at particular project. We are going to write down that, hey, this is the way it should work. but it is not working like that way. So there is a expected behavior, there is unexpected behavior. So going to push that, and then they're taking and they trying to solve that one, right? So, but the good part is by contributing these open source projects help a lot to communicate with these folks, the engineers, right? The engineers, or gaining some insight about like what kind of a technology they are using it, and how that if a learning that technology can be beneficial to your professional career, or maybe into any other projects that you're going to work on. So let's say if you would like to give advice to any developers, like hey, you want to contribute to, what kind of advice that you give, what their approach should be?
Oh, that's interesting. I know there's one thing I really like is that, at least something that we've been doing at TracetestL right now, is that if you're actually very careful in your GitHub issues and you tag them with help wanted or good first issue, those tags help, man. Like, people actually actively look for that. If they want to, they actively look for that. One other thing that I like doing is that I like doing something that's called it's like it's gonna sound awful, but it's like hero programs or community hero programs, right? And I say that because there are certain people in the community that are actually opening up tons of issues. Let's say we have one user that he keeps opening up issues like once a week. He sees something that might be off, might be broken, or might be something interesting to add, and he opens up issues. And that's the type of person that is considered a community hero. Why? Because he's actually advocating without anybody asking him to. He's advocating for the product. He's advocating to make it better. And I like rewarding people like that, because I know I have problems with that. And I like rewarding people, right? I like saying, yo, we would really like to put you on this list of people that are influential in our community. And doing that is a massive help to get people to engage, which is also something, if you want to contribute yourself, why not do that? Code contributions aren't really the only contributions. It doesn't have to be code. You can do whatever. You can go into GitHub and say, yo, this is awesome. I found this one problem that I think you could improve this way. And then you talk to people, because thinking about solutions is also a contribution. Writing about a solution, like a blog post or like a documentation page or whatever, that's also a massive contribution. Because if you've had a problem and it took you hours and hours to figure out how to set something up, and you write the blog post to make it simple for somebody to set it up in 15 minutes, or a documentation page, dude, that's a great contribution, and everybody's going to be very thankful for you for contributing that. So the notion of only focusing on code contributions, we have to, I like saying that we need to push that out of our mental image. Like, it's not just code. There's a lot of things we can contribute to. So
but I think these are the best people, because no one is paying for what they're doing, right? So that's considered as an actual contribution, and absolutely right, to reward them. But when I used to study, and Oktoberfest is a very famous, right? When you going to launch a project and you pull your first issue. So people or maybe our professor, they used to say that do this, because that way you can show them that you actually contributed to the issue, and people, based on your GitHub profile, that might be help you to showcase what you're doing it, right? And that maybe help you to understand more about the product that you are, or maybe that's somewhere, because I got hired from, I used to work for one of the company called Zabbix, which is also open source monitoring tool, right? So I got my first gig from there only, because so I was setting the system where, as you know, how monitoring system works, right? So I setting, then there was a one error bug which is fixed with the Apache. So I just posed there, and I created a one bug for them that, hey, this is the thing, it's not working, and this is the way it should work. And I also find out a way to fix it, actually. So I also put that, hey, if you just go and modify this files, so maybe this can fix. So maybe in the next list can do that. And they give me a reward, that they give me very cool t-shirt or some other cool goodies to that. But that helped me a lot to understand that, okay, now I have a direct connect to those developers or the people who are working on it, and I got the chance to work with their pioneer project, and I got hired from them. So this is also very helpful. But the most tedious part is when people is we need to give a lot of time to this one, right? So and it's very hard where people not able to manage their time. So how to balance that is very much important. I'm still struggled a lot to, let's say creating a tutorial or let's say writing a blog post and also, working some freelance projects. Maintaining this all life balance is really tedious task. How do you do that? And what piece of advice that you give people uh, to, maintain the life, because that kind of a piece for them so that they can focus on more on a good work rather than just running behind the things which can lead you nowhere.
The short answer is go to the gym. That's the short answer. No, I'm not even joking. I'm 100%. Since I started actively doing like any physical exercises, it can be whatever. It can be martial arts, judo, boxing. It can be weightlifting. It can be CrossFit. It can be sports. Whatever floats your boat. Whatever you like. Dedicate 2 or 3 hours per day to do that stuff. Don't look at the screen. Don't look at any screen for those 2-3 hours per day. And I trust me, you're going to want to work more productively, and you're going to have an easier time to work productively. And that's just facts. That's on me. That's smarter people than me saying that and me listening to them, right? So yeah, that's my only real honest truth I can say.
No, I totally agree, and that's kind of a struggle for me because I'm actually trying my level best to that I need to wake up early in the morning and go for running, which I love that, and I did continue for like a year and all, but from last 6 month schedule is so much messed up. And when I was going and doing this kind of activities, maybe going for a walk or a run or going to the gym, that makes a lot, like a mental peace as well, because I used to hit a very hard, I used to do a very hard cardio, and that's makes me very good and fresh when I was to work on the project. But one of the part is it's very difficult that don't look at your screen, because as you know, the developers now they don't want to go away from the screen, and that leads to a lot of issues. So what is the motivation to go to the gym? Because that's the hardest part, right? Go to gym. Okay, I every day myself I say that hey, I have to wake up in the morning and to go gym, or like say go for a run. I tried in the last 7 days I woke up 3 times, but the next day when I stopped it, the very other next day I'm not able to go there because there was a break.
That's
Right?
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You have to dedicate. You have to just block off that time in your calendar. You have to figure out your daily routine, because routines are important. If your sleeping patterns and your sleeping routines and your no screen time routines are the same every day, and you commit to them, trust me, it's going to help massively, right? Also, one thing that's probably important is that read why you should be training. Doesn't matter what it is. You read up on it. There are people that are very smart that have explained that doing heavy lifting or any type of heavy lifting, your muscles are whatever secreting or generating some sort of freaking proteins or some like hormones or some shit. I don't even know. That enables you to your brain to function better, right? It's even the ancient Greeks back in the day said in a healthy mind is in a healthy body is a healthy mind, or whatever. A healthy mind builds a healthy body, whatever the fuck. You understand what I'm saying? And that if they said it, they probably had a point fucking 2,000 years ago. So they people nowadays, if they say the same thing, they're probably right. So there's a reason. There's a hormone. I don't know what it is. I have to look it up exactly what it is. But there's a hormone that your muscles generate or secrete or whatever when you're lifting heavy, which helps your brain function. Same as creatine. If you drink creatine, it's not just for your muscles. It improves your brain function as well. And if you want to be quick and alert when you're working on complicated problem-solving stuff like we're doing every day as engineers or as developer relations, whatever we're doing, you have to be alert and you have to be quick and you have to be very you have to understand what the hell is happening, and you have to be rested, and you have to be well slept, and you have to be alert, so all of those things, it all goes in the same loop. And yeah, also one thing that I would suggest, if you really want to kick in the butt for your productivity regarding actually doing the workouts, do a systematic check. Go to the doctor, pay for that like full body checkup, like your blood work, your whatever work, your like bone density, muscle mass, fat, BMI, whatever you want to call them. Do all of that.
Your whole BMR.
Yes, if you do all of that, and you'll, because engineers who are sitting eight hours a day and doing jack shit and just eating, everything is going to be pretty shit. It's going to be all red. It's going to be terrible. And then when you see that and you're like 29 or whatever the hell, I'm 29, and I see like, oh, all of this, my body is actually terrible. And you see like, I'm going to have to freaking change this. And then you actually change it, which is something, if you see that happen to you, you have to change something. So if that's not a wake-up call,
Yeah, totally. Because in that, it shows your actually the biological age, right? What
Yes.
should be your age and what age you're, for example, if I'm at 25, I did my BMR, it shows 29. And
There
I
you
was like, yeah, I said, and that's hit very hard. Like when you ask a girl about their age, so they feel very offended, right? Similarly, when you are not that age and you are saying, okay, that's really hit really bad. I'm not sure about the others, but I am going to be more consistent for sure in this one, because I know how this helps a lot to actually balance out the piece and to more concentrate about the work that we're doing it, right? And for this also you need to be very patientful, right? Because looking at you, I in my previous podcast, there was a guy who he hates creating the video tutorials. He likes to write a lot. And he's one of my very close friend, and he's in Berlin. He's working in Okta as a developer advocate. So in the last week only I recorded a podcast with him. So, and he published 2 or 3 books. And only one question I asked him, like, how are you able to manage your time? Because writing a book, blog post, you can definitely do that, right? Writing a book, it's a very tedious task for me, because a person who does not have a good reading habit, I'm not able to do that, because for that you need to require a lot of time. You need to require a lot of proofreading as well. You need to get some other feedback as well, that hey, how is it? And then you're going to publish and get people feedback on that. So, and I've seen you also did that, right? So this is because of you love blog writing, or you do go gym. And thus everything is going to work for you to write that book.
It's I think it's more uh, it's a similar logical concept. You have to block off time to dedicate for the book without external factors messing up your productivity. That's for one, definitely. And number two, there's no secret sauce really. At least for me, I approached it as like, you're just kind of writing multiple blog posts, and that's a book. If you think of it that way, every chapter of a book is kind of like a blog post. The topic is similar, but it's a different thing. So one would be, here's how you install Node.js, for example, with whatever, and then chapter 2 is like, well, here's how you run this with Node.js and whatever. And the chapter 3 would be, well, here's the better way of doing it, and then here's the best practices. So it's basically every blog post can be a chapter of a book, if you think of it that way. And that's how I went about thinking of it. I wrote a few blog posts that logically fit together in a sequence, and eventually it became a book. It's it's an ebook. It's not like a real book. It's an ebook.
Right.
But it's still a book, whatever. But that's my reasoning. As long as you know how to logically construct blog posts that can be read in a sequence, you've already written a book. I mean, I've written so many blog posts in my career. It could have easily been multiple books, but I never really had the energy, nor did I really want to specifically put them in a book. But yeah, I think that's the secret sauce for me, at least. There is no real, magic to it. You just think of it as blog posts, and it just works.
So I think here my take is the way you're looking at the problem. For example, for me, the problem is writing a book. For me, okay, this is a very long book. How much I'm going to able to build time? But you very rightly said that if you think about that way, if you write a 10 blog posts, combine that, so ultimately you wrote a book. So till now, I have written around 52 blog posts, right? And most of them on Kubernetes and GCP. So ultimately, can I consider that I have written the book?
Yeah, I mean, why
Ideal?
not? If you take all of the blog posts, you figure out a logical structure of hierarchy based on complexity. You can say, yo, this is the first chapter, this is the second chapter, or you can even call it a book of recipes, GCP recipes, and you can say 10 chapters, and the 10 chapters contain isolated examples for the blog post that you've written. I mean, why not? You know, and that's at least for me, that's something people actually want to know, especially for engineering. Like, do you think DevOps people want to read a book about dev? No, they want a quick start. They want to know specifically how to do X with freaking whatever, right? They don't care about the book. They care about how to solve a problem.
Absolutely. You know, the people who are listening to this podcast, specifically, when you're looking at the problem, don't just look at the problem. How you can actually, in the substantial manner, in a distributed way, you can fix that. So I think the way you're looking at your approach should be very important, as you rightly said, right? So I think people have to think in that way. I think a lot of people are going to hear that. And those who are struggling, not just to writing a book, but also writing the blog, the blog post as well, because they also feel that it's a consuming task. Now, often people ask me that whenever I go to any conferences, I always write a blog post about my experience. I never create a video, but I always write a blog post that consists of like how, how I went there, what kind of topic that I covered, how it went, what are the difficulties that I faced, and the most important part, what I did is whenever I used to write any blog post, I used to give it to the fellow people and I tell them, hey, can you just give me feedback like how we do? A couple of people give me feedback and try to improve. And one of the best advice that I got is whenever you write anything, you always mention that what next you are planning. Always mention what next you are doing it at the end of the chapter or at the end of the blog post. Maybe you're writing another blog post, write down about it. You are going for another meetup or a talk, write about that. You will be going for this talk and you are going to write that. So that will motivate and people get curious what next you are going to come up with. And I was getting very hard time to write about that, but I was then trying to write in my own way on own language that can people relate. So if they read about it, they don't need to find any other extra information found here and there. They will get everything in one single stance. So, right. So just to combine what you said and to what I said is to your approach, the way you're looking at the things which can make you think it's a difficult. It can be easy if you just look at what is your way of working, what is your pattern of doing the work. That might be somewhere fit and you can easily fix that one. Right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's smart. Yeah, I did something similar a few years back. So up until probably sometime in 2021, I think, where pretty much every single one of my blog posts would end with a link to a previous blog post that's a similar topic. So I went the other way around. Right? You were talking about future things. I was talking about past blog posts or content or whatever. So which is, I mean, again, who the hell knows which is the correct way of doing it? If they both work, they're both correct, right? And I think it's a very interesting take to say, to leave in a teaser for something you're doing down the road. That's very, very smart, actually. I do it right now. I do that, but only if I have something specifically planned in mind. So let's say, and I do it at the top of the post, not at the bottom, which is another thing. Let's say I write a blog post about monitoring whatever, but I'm also planning on doing a webinar, let's say a partnership with the people that are creating that product. Let's say here's a stupid example, Grafana. You know, I wrote a blog post about using Grafana, and 2 weeks from now, I have a webinar scheduled with the DevRels at Grafana, where we're going to talk about how we're using TracetestL and Grafana together. That's an example, right? I'm going to put that at the top, where I'm going to say, hey, welcome to whatever intro blog post. This is what we're going to be doing in this blog post. And then we do a call out and say, block in 2 weeks, we're going to have a webinar. Listen to us live where you can ask questions and do whatever. But read the blog post first so you actually know what's going to be happening, what we are going to show you on the webinar itself. So things like that, I really like doing that. So it's a very similar thing to what you're already doing. But my change would be that's only specific if I'm already planning something ahead, where I have a link or something actual that people can go to.
So ultimately, you always need to give a reference what you're referring, so that people should not lost while they're going through what you're trying them to go through, right?
Mhm.
For example, when we create a documentation for a product, let's say TracetestL, you create a documentation. Every here and there, you might be put some reference so that help them to jump over there to see, because you never know. When we navigate, we crazily just click there, and if we don't find the relevance over there, we lost there
Mhm.
only.
Yep,
Right?
yep.
So that doesn't make sense for me. But so when you do this collaborations, right? Because I think, and you said that, you are using Grafana, right? And then you collaboratively done that how Grafana can be built on using the trust test, right? So that's a lot of things is happening as you can call it as a collaboration, which we do with the other communities or other product teams to how we can use that particular product on the top of what they are building it or the platform that are using it, right? So when you guys are doing it, or maybe on the blog post medium, or maybe on the webinar, or maybe in the conferences, right? So what are the preparations, or what are the things that you prepare before you go further, right? Because the people who are very new into these systems and they wanted to present something, maybe a new fresh topic, or maybe in the collaboration, what are the things that help them a lot to, because I faced a lot of technical difficulties in so many of my talks, but and that experience helped me a lot, because now I can tell someone else these are the things that you need to take care of it, and maybe something that else comes, they can definitely share with the community. So what your experience when delivering the talks, or maybe done this collaboration webinars, or any other thing, that how you prepare yourself, what are the things that you make sure that they should be helpful to the people who are going to see or going to read your material.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm such an amazing engineer that all of my live demos work. I'm joking. No, no. No. Have backups for backups for backups for backups. That's what I do. If I'm doing live talks, as in-person conference talks, never do live demos. Never ever. I did it once or twice when I was really young. And they don't work. They're boring and they don't work. You're not gonna have 20 minutes for a conference talk. You don't have time to do a live demo. Nobody's gonna watch it. It's gonna be weird. It's gonna be clunky. It's gonna be whatever. Nobody wants to listen to you talk about that shit for. It's a 20-minute talk. So what I've been doing for the last few years is it's still a code demo, but it's not live. So all of the code, you slap it on the slide deck, put it on the slides. You say, this is a code that I want to do. You put a screenshot of what's going to happen with that code, and you say, this is what's going to happen. If you really want to go fancy, you can do GIFs or videos or whatever, but I don't think it doesn't, developers don't care about that stuff. I want to see, this is what I have to do. This is what I get. We're not, they're not stupid. They'll figure it out, and that's, at least for me, that's what I like doing. I like giving tangible problem solution scenarios without showing live code. First, because it's fast. Second, because it's efficient. I don't want to do live coding. Live coding is amazing if you have 90 minutes. If you have less than 90 minutes, okay, let's say 1 hour, 60 minutes. It's doable, right? It's doable, but it has to be a workshop. It's not a conference talk then. It's a workshop. There's no slides. There's no nothing. You're just doing the coding, and you're just doing, here's the best practices that I want to do. You can have 2 slides where you can say, we want to do X, Y, Z, and then you go in and show it right away. That's perfectly fine. But that's a totally different thing. You have to know what is expected of you. Is it a conference talk? Is it a workshop? What are you doing? And based on that, what is expected of you, you can go about doing it properly. My advice would be, as I said, have backups for backups for backups. Ideally, have something running in the cloud, because the cloud, like, it doesn't really break. If you put it on the cloud in a cluster or whatever, it's
Right.
probably going to work all the time, always, right? It's not going to freaking break. So prepare your examples. Have a code, have a code sample, have a code repository in GitHub or whatever that you can send people. Have a link that you can send people. They can clone it. They can run one command and it works. That's the way you get people to like your product. That's the way you get people to use your product. If you're forcing them to install 7 different things, they're not going to do it, and they're not going to try your product. It's very simple. Everybody knows that. Freaking Steve Jobs and Apple. Like, it's people buy fucking iPhones. Here's an iPhone because they work. They just work. You put whatever the headphones are, the Apple Pods or whatever they call them. You open them, you put them in, and it works. Like, people use them because they're simple. It's that your product should be the same. A good product tells the engineer what to do. That's basically how it should be, right? So my suggestion is make it stupid simple. Like, keep it simple, stupid. The KISS, the abbreviation. Keep it as simple as possible. Always have links for examples. Don't do live demos if you have 20 minutes. Just don't. For webinars, have backups. So the webinar itself is 60 minutes of you doing it. The prep work for a 60-minute webinar is probably 40 hours of active 30 to 40 hours of active involvement. Figure out what code to show, how to set up the code so you have the entire repository. You can just comment in and comment out different code snippets, and different things will happen in the different outcomes will show up in the website or whatever you're showing, in the tool you're showing.
Right.
And that's how you get people hooked. Nobody wants to look at you freaking type code. They want you to comment out and comment in, save the thing, and it works, and something changes. That's what people want, because when you send them that, you can send them the code that's commented in and commented out with labels, what does what, and people can actually do, so if I change this, I'm going to get that, which is basically having in-code documentation. Developers, we like documentation. Documentation is what sells the product, but also a lot of people don't really read the documentation very thoroughly. They kind of skim it a bit. They find some code samples. If you put the documentation in the code samples, everybody will read it. It's big brain theories. So that's my general ideas for doing demos or doing talks and doing webinars, workshops, or whatever you want to call them. But the biggest thing I think is most important, I'm going to say it again, be mindful of the time you get allotted. Be mindful of what is expected of you. Don't waste people's time. If a committee for a conference has picked you, they probably think that you're pretty awesome, and the topic is pretty awesome.
Right.
Own it. Be awesome. Like, don't waste people's time. So that's just my point of view.
I think the people who are listening to this podcast, I think you should really follow this if you are giving a talk, not just in a conference as well, but in a small meetup as well. These are the very, very small, as you said, a very simple thing. It should run a very quick. And as you rightly mentioned, because being a speaker, because in the beginning, people are so excited, when they want to deliver a talk and to prepare something, they're very excited. But they tend to forget because they always think about their time. I think you rightly mentioned, because I always keep that in mind. Whenever I go, I should do respect the people who are going to attend your talk. You to respect that, and their time should not be wasted. So if you think that way, ultimately what is your part is going to be covered up, right? And one more thing I would like to add, as you said, as you say, backup. I say, like, if you have plan A, have a plan B, plan C, then plan D, then plan E, then plan F. Don't just have plan A and B. Have plan C, D, E, F as well. So that should work. When you have a workshop as well, if your live demo is not working, it's a better because somebody advised you, because there was a situation where my live demo was not working. So they advised me that you should always have a video of your, the demo. So if the live demo is not working, you just go and play the video and just explain them what actually happening over there. That's the best way. And the second that you mentioned, prepare a notes in such a way that within a single command it should work. It should not waste that much of time, because people don't have that much time, right? And they don't want to go in sticker because they can easily find out. Because people are going to attend, they know what exactly you are going to talk about. They have some reference of it, but it should be very quick, easy, and as we say, is that much stupid that easily understand. Because if it's the stupidest thing, then you can easily figure it out, right? You want people to easily figure it out. So people highly just follow this one. If you even if it's your first talk, or even if you are even if a pro and having this, because these are the things where you get from not from the experience, but the kind of experiment you do over these years, right? Because you try a lot of things. Something works, something doesn't work, right? So I think people got covered. Like what are the things they should keep in mind? Couple of things is going to help me a lot. I'm going to keep in my mind. Specifically, go to gym. I'm going to do that for sure. I don't know how, but the day I go, I'm going to then go on Twitter. I'm going to tweet and I'm going to tag you. That, hey, I did that.
Definitely. And
I'm
if it's easier, you can always get a personal trainer. If you have a hard time going, pay a dude for 30 days to shout at you, and you'll start going. And once you get the habit of going, it's just going to be a part of your day.
You won't believe I did that. As I said last year, I was so active. I used to do that. I had a personal trainer. The only problem is, and I have only one asking him that why don't you call me? I'm paying you just keep calling me in the morning. I told him, call me in the morning, 6 o'clock, and make sure I'll come over here.
Yeah.
And he was not doing it. So maybe
It's a
that's
bad
my
personal trainer, man. It's a terrible
yeah.
personal trainer.
He
But yeah,
was
no, it's the accountability. I swear, it's the accountability that you pay for that.
I paid because as you know, like how much personal trainer cost, right? But that ultimately goes in that being, right? But somehow it didn't work, so I'm not going to follow. I'm just trying to follow my routine. Now I know because that was the first time I ever had in the gym, and I don't know even how to use the dumbbells or how to even in a perfect manner how work out. Posture is very important that I got to know because otherwise you're gonna get a bad injury. So I learned all the postures and now I can do correctly. So I don't need trainer, but yeah, I need my self motivation because if you are not self motivated, nothing is going to work for you. No
Yeah.
trainer, no, nothing in the hell of the world is going to work for you. Right? Uh, yes. In the last, I heard about the trust test a lot. Like if you can share more about what Trash is doing. And while I was searching, is it a part of Cube Shop? Because I see there are a lot of CNCF projects, and there was a Cube Shop, and there was a Trust Test. At my impression, that I think that it's both are the joint project or maybe under the same umbrella. Is it the case, or am I referring totally wrong?
No, you're right. Cube Shop is the accelerator. So that's basically the accelerator that's boosting all of these products. There are multiple products within Cube Shop that are being developed. The one I'm working on is TracetestL, and that's in a nutshell. It gives you a way of integration and end-to-end testing your APIs and your software, Kubernetes, distributed services, serverless, all of that. But you're doing that integration testing through OpenTelemetry tracing. So if you have distributed traces in your, let's say, Kubernetes cluster, you can add TracetestL. It's just a container, You can add TracetestL to your cluster, and you can
Okay.
start running API tests on the services within your cluster, where the assertions themselves are the traces, the trace spans, which is freaking magical because, if you have one API that, you're triggering a service that's triggering another service, and then that's triggering an external API, and then that's triggering a Redis, and then that Redis is loading something back into it, and it's a freaking cluster shit. It's horrible. It's 7 different things are happening, and you have no idea how to validate that transaction. You have to, if you want to, and you have to mock 5 different services. You have to figure out how they all work together. You have to figure out the values. With TracetestL, you don't. You have distributed tracing already, so you're obviously using OpenTelemetry or whatever else tool you're using for tracing.
Mhm.
We tap into that, get all of the traces, and then you can write assertions based on the spans. So if you have trace let's say you have a span attribute that says, oh, so this request returned within, I don't know, 100 milliseconds. And then you can have, oh, this database returned within 100 milliseconds. You can do tests like, I want to make sure all of my database spans returned within 100 milliseconds. And that's like 2 seconds to add that test. If you want to write that test with like legacy tooling or whatever kind of integration tooling, it's freaking 7 days. You know, it's horrible, horrible. So that's basically the gist of what we are building. Is just a better way to test microservices, a better way of testing distributed services, serverless, and all of that. Cloud native, basically. Anything that's cloud native, it just makes it easier to test. And if you're running cloud native, and if you're running a big system, you have distributed tracing already. And if you have distributed tracing, using TracetestL is just plug and play. You know, it's all there and ready to go. Which is something it's pretty magical when you actually go in and start using it. Another idea that has popped up for us is that developers have a hard time writing trace spans as well. Let's say I, as a developer, I want to make sure that I'm adding my trace instrumentation, so my code instrumentation for OpenTelemetry, whilst I'm writing a feature for whatever new feature I'm writing.
Right.
You know, I want to know what that trace looks like before I push it to my production code. So pre-merge testing, and I can do that as well. I run TracetestL as a container locally. I push the traces to TracetestL. I can run my tests, and I have a native, what's it called, test feedback loop. So I can run an API test, and I can see what the trace looks like. I can make sure that the spans that I want to show are there. I can see that in the UI. I can create the test there right away. So I can create a test and say, these specifications I want to run on these spans and these attributes. And then from there, export that file, export that test as a file, and then automate it, put it in a CI and run it whenever I want to run it. Because with the CLI that we provide, you can just run a test with a file. So it's basically making tracing easy. That's the point of it. We want to make it easier for devs to get started with tracing. We want to make it easier for DevOps people to integrate code bases easier. We want people to just have it so that tracing is part of, like, observability in general is part of their development stack. And that's pretty much what we want to do. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense to people.
Yeah, cool. And that's really interesting because I am definitely going to try this one, because next week I'm going to be delivering a workshop on Kubernetes. So I'm before that I'm anyways going to create a demo. So I'm going to try this one and let me see if I can show something over there, because this is very interesting, right? But the only one I ask, like, when you create this test cases, right? So do you need to write in the YAML or any other, in a manner that you try to this automatically write that cases for us?
Oh, you write it in YAML, or you click through the UI. So you can visually go into the UI and say, I want this particular span, and then you can see a list of the attributes, and then you go, I want this attribute, which is the HTTP dot status code or whatever. I want that one to be equal to 200. You can obviously write it in YAML as well, but you can also write it visually and export that entire specification into a file and then run it from the CLI. So I mean, it's very flexible. If you're an engineer, you can write it in the programmatically right away. If you are a lazy engineer like me, you can just click in the UI and then export the file, and that's basically it. We had a user say he had wonderful feedback because he was using Dapper. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dapper. It's distributed systems. Yeah, so Dapper is super cool, and they have built-in tracing out of the box, right? And he was using Dapper and he was using TracetestL to validate, because he had hundreds and hundreds of microservices, and he was trying to validate and basically create integration tests. And he said that that takes days. It takes multiple days. He even said exponentially, like to the power of 10th. He's a super smart guy. Obviously, don't know what to the power of 10th means. So he was basically saying it takes days to create this test without TracetestL, and then by using TracetestL, it's like minutes. You just click on what you want, validate it, take the file, export the file, put it into the CI, and you're done. You're ready, right? It's phenomenal to see that people like him found useful. I found a useful use case. I'm really happy with that. And hopefully more people, not just the ones using Dapper, are going to use it. But yeah, no, I mean, having you do a sample as well, or see how you could integrate yourself. I mean, definitely Kubernetes or whatever. You know, we're pretty easy to get started with pretty much anything.
As you said, you are the engineer who are lazy, right? Who like to play with the graphical user space. I've seen and came across with one of the tool. I'm not able to recall the name. So now, if you want to build a CI/CD pipeline as well, you don't need to have that much expert. You can just go create your pipeline, pick up your platform, pick up the platform that you want to build. Just create a pipeline and it's done. Complete graphical interface. You don't need any intervention of any CLI intervention is not needed. So, but don't you think that makes engineer lazy?
I mean, is lazy productive? Yeah, you have to be. That's what I'm saying. I was. So let's see. Back in the day when I was doing my startup, I was a very lazy engineer. You know what that meant? Everything that could be automated ended up being automated. Yes. So there's a win. There's a win in being lazy. I didn't want to do shit twice. So I said, if I'm gonna do it twice, I'm gonna automate it. I'm gonna make sure it runs by itself. You know. So I think from that point of view, dude, if you can make a test in minutes and then slap that in a GitHub action and it just running whenever you want it to run, that's freaking powerful, man. It's really
super
powerful.
Cool. That's super awesome. Cool. I'm definitely going to try that. And since Linux is one of my most fashionable system, I never use Microsoft in my entire life. I don't know why I'm going to try that.
Smart move.
Yes. I'm not going to try that one, but so because of the system, I try to build a lot of scripting and try to do a lot of automate stuff. That makes my life easy because in the beginning of my career, I used to migrate a lot of websites and migration. So it's a very manual stuff is involved. So I try to write a script which can automatically done that. Only the intervention if something is break, some interruption was there, or system got down, then I had to see. So of course, lazy, but create that automate stuff that can make the people are going to use our product, their life much more easier. So that part is going to make sense. And I always try to do this task which can make my time very easy for me, right? So I can save time and I can do something else. So I'm definitely going to try this one. So if let's say it's an open source, right? If anyone wants to contribute, right? So what are the ways people can get involved? For example, there is a code contribution, there will be a documentation, or there may be some other ways. So what are the areas which is open where people can come and check out this awesome project?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think the best way to contribute is to just join the community. We have a community page on our website. It's quite literally tracetest.io/community, and everything is there. You can check out either being part of our community call. So we do community calls every last Wednesday of the month. We have a Discord channel where you can pop in and talk to both myself. I'm leading the DevRel, so basically doing everything community and all that. DevRel. Who the hell knows what all we do? And then you can talk to the engineers. You can talk to the TracetestL founder as well. He's a lovely guy as well. All of our engineers are freaking lovely. And they like talking to users as well. So, you can pop in there. One great thing you can also do is that we're always looking forward to talk to contributors regarding either integrations and content. Content can be blog posts, tutorials, documentation, anything like that. And obviously, we want to, by the end of, I think, this year, already beginning of Q4, we're planning on actually picking up on the community heroes program, or whatever we want to call it. We'll figure out the name of it. So that's something we really want to start doing. So getting people in there from like most active community members is going to be super fun, and getting that going. And yeah, I mean, I think that's basically the easiest way. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way.
Perfect. I am definitely going to try that. So maybe, I don't know, I could be the community hero or something, maybe in the future.
I mean, why not? Why not? You already know me, right? So you have an inside person from the community. You can ask questions. You can basically any issue you might have.
100%. And the one of the piece of advice is always give people that ask a question. Always ask a question, because even the question is stupid, that's okay. Ask question. That's most important part. And any in the trust test, any in the near future, what's your goal?
So I have to remember what I'm allowed to say.
Only
Uh,
open source. That's all.
so no, I'm joking. I'm joking. So the ideas we have right now. So we just recently launched something called Trace Analyzer. So that's a feature within the tool that it will give you a score how good your trace actually is. So think of what's it called? Lighthouse by Google.
Okay.
It basically ranks how fast your page is loading, how good you've created the web page, etc., etc. It's a very similar concept for that, where we're actually generating a page. I mean, generating a score based on based on the quality of your trace itself. So whether you're following conventions, whether you have rules, you're following the rules that the conventions enforce, whether you're using common patterns, whether you're using safety, as in security, and things like that. So that's a feature that we just literally launched. And the next month or so, that regarding plans that we want to do, we want to make that as good as possible. So that's the developer workflow, developer lifecycle thing, where we want the analyzer to be amazing. So when somebody's using it locally for the development, they actually know how to make a distributed trace and how to write the code and instrumentation as good as possible, right? Which is a big deal. I mean, the open telemetry documentation is good, but it's not really that great regarding the conventions. There's a lot of stuff on a lot of documentation pages, and we just wanted to make it centralized, so that when somebody goes there, they can still read the docs. They should read the documentation, obviously, but we want to make it easier for somebody that has no idea what they're doing to actually kind of gradually get into it, right? Which is a big problem. And then based on goals after that, we're going to definitely be working on a cloud version of it. So for people that, let's say, don't want to run it locally or don't want to do the hassle of running it in their own Kubernetes, you can get a cloud version, and you can just point to the endpoint you want to use in the cloud, and then you basically just have traces running like that. And that's basically the big goals that we have to get that going. Oh, one more thing. We want to make it, because you know how trace spans also have logs? You can basically attach logs and events to a trace span. I mean, it's in the conventions.
For the monitoring purpose?
Yes. So you basically, you want to attach the context. So let's say you have a distributed trace for one API call. You have a distributed trace. And for that particular distributed trace, you also want to attach logs for that particular context, right? That's something we also want to support, because there are several other tools that we want to integrate with that use span events and span logs. So we're going to totally include all of that as well, because right now we only do the span attributes, which is pretty much 99% of people use span attributes alone. So we want to make sure that we're covering all of that, because we've had a few users asking for that as well. So we're going to make sure that we get all of the data that's contained in a distributed trace. We can get all of that into TracetestL, and we can get all of that as viable data to run tests against. So you can get, let's say you want to do feature flags. Feature flags are set in trace events, right? In the span events, sorry. If you want to do tests based on feature flags, where you're testing whether a feature flag is enabled, disabled, whatever you want to do, you're doing that via the events. And we want to make sure that that's also an option in TracetestL. So basically just covering all of the bases and making sure that the testing aspect of it is as good as it can be. And then we're building the cloud version. And from there, the sky is the limit, I would say.
Of course, when you're going to put in the cloud, so then the sky is the limit. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it out, but yeah, the best thing that I heard is test analyzer, which can give scoring. So that is sounds super cool, super amazing. I'm definitely going to try that for sure. And if hopeful, in the next of any of my demo, if I can use that, or trying to use this one, and I see if I can integrate, or somehow I can share the demo to someone else, I can definitely use that one and try to gather some feedback and definitely share with you.
That
But
would be awesome. That'd be awesome.
super awesome plan. I think I never heard anyone who having a super cool plan, right? What exactly you're focusing and what down the line, because as I said, what's next is very important for me all the time. And I've seen here a very clear picture, and that way the makes our user very curious that why you should use this one and what are the impact that going to bring. Whether it as per a project perspective, business perspective, or as a community perspective as well. So I would say all notch on top for sure. So uh, I, I think in this podcast I learned a lot. I got a couple of things which I am going to imply for in my routine, and something I'm going to learn. Some extra tool is going to add in my dictionary now. So super grateful for this conversation. Do you have any question for me? So I always ask at the end, like, any question, any crazy question for me.
First one, you better let me know when you do the gym. I want to see accountability, man. I want to see accountability. That's number one. And number two, you better let me know when you tried TracetestL, man, because I want to hear feedback.
I will.
I
I
want
will.
if it sucks, tell me that it sucks. I want to know what's bad so we can fix it.
For sure. And I'm definitely going to share the feedback, and I'll people who are listening to this podcast, I'm going to put all the links or the resources in the description section so that you find all the information at a one single stance. And thanks, Anna. I had a amazing conversation. Thanks for the great tips, by the way. That's and I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to I'm promising myself over here. So now I have to be accountable because now it's on record. So I'm going.
Nice, nice,
Yes,
nice, nice,
I'm
nice.
going to do that
It's
for sure.
you have to like, it's a marathon, man. Going to the gym, it's not a sprint. You have to take it slow, take it easy, and think of the longevity of it. Because when somebody asks me, they go like, "Oh, so how long do I have to go to the gym to be buff or to be strong?" And my answer is always, until you die. There is no stopping. You go until you die, and that's it. Like you don't get buff and stop. You have to go all the time to maintain your physical fitness and to maintain basically your health. So I think that's something to take away.
That's definitely my caption. Go until you die.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of messed up. It sounds very terrible. It's basically you never stop going. You go
Yeah.
until you're very old. That's basically.
Ultimately, you should never give up. You should keep going. Consistency is something that you should be maintaining every other, like whether you're personal, professional, in every other aspect, it should be very important. And thanks, Adnan, again. After having 2-3 calls scheduled, we finally did it, and I had an amazing time. I hope you had as well.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for having me. It was super, super fun. Yeah, let's continue the conversation offline as well. We do some asynchronous chatting as well. We don't have to be on calls all the time.
Uh, Anytime, anytime. And thanks everyone who watching this one. And we are going to come up with more amazing people from the open source ecosystem. We're going to share a lot of things about some of the cool projects around it. And the only thing that whatever you think, don't just think, just do it. That's most important part. Don't think, just do it. Right. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and thanks, Adnan, for. I'm not never going to remember, and I am. We are going to have another podcast very soon. Maybe on some different stance for sure, but we are going to have it. Maybe
Sure,
gaming
let's
session.
let's. It's not gonna be tacos. It's gonna be proteins.
Yes. Please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adnan.
Thank you. Take care. Yeah.